Hi. The film I'll be talking about today is The Cooler. This film was directed by Wayne Kramer and was released in 2003. This film stars William H. Macy, Maria Bello, Alec Baldwin, Paul Sorvino, and Ron Livingston. This film takes place in Las Vegas in a casino called the Shangri-La. And it's about the inner workings in the casino and the things that are going on and the characters that make up the casino. It really centers around William H. Macy's character, Bernie. This is not the type of character you would expect in any way, shape, or form to see in a movie that's set in Las Vegas, especially that's about the inner workings of a casino. When you think of Vegas, you think of the film actually called Casino that Scorsese did, and people like Joe Pesci and Robert De Niro, and, kind of mob guys or slick guys. Whereas William H. Macy, he has the face that looks like he would belong in a Norman Rockwell painting. I mean, it's just one of those kind of character faces, almost like a caricature in Mad Magazine or something like that. And when you first see him in the film, and the film starts off with a beautiful aerial shot of Las Vegas, and it almost tells us sort of a little bit what we're in for, that this is not a typical Las Vegas romp, a bachelor party type film like The Hangover or about a guy who's trying to beat the casino. This is a kind of sad, melancholy film, and in so many ways, Vegas is that type of city. And William H. Macy's character embodies that in his performance, Bernie. This is a guy who's been put upon. And when we see him first in the casino walking around, we notice that he walks with a limp. And he's in this suit that looks out of place in Vegas. It's anything but distinguished. It's not some pinstripe suit. He doesn't look like, a well-dressed guy. He almost looks like a unsuccessful car salesman or the type of guy who's a substitute teacher that we all would have run over when they showed up if we were in high school back then. But we notice he just kind of walks around the casino, and we don't really know what he's doing. And then we soon find out that he kind of goes to a table when somebody's on a streak, and what we see is he diminishes it. He puts a stop to it. Not by doing anything, simply just by his presence. He doesn't interfere. He doesn't say, hold it, or anything of that nature. He shows up and seems to curb their winning streak just by being there. Why he's referred to is the cooler. And I had never heard of this concept before. It sounds like kind of an old Vegas kind of cliche, but apparently it was a real thing. And in the movie, we see him kind of making his rounds, and then he goes to the bar where he knows the bartender, and she goes to pour him a cup of coffee. And we notice when she goes to put the cream, she says, "We're out," and who cares, it doesn't matter, and he just takes it. And you really feel for this guy. He's down on his luck, and he just seems like this milquetoast guy in a world that he has no business being in. And we then see this waitress that we can tell he has an interest in, played by Maria Bello, Natalie. And her main thing is she's trying to get to the tables. She's trying to get assigned to work the lounge. And Bernie says, I'll talk to Shelley for you. Shelley, we learn, is the guy who runs the place, played by Alec Baldwin. And a great performance. Alec Baldwin was actually nominated for an Oscar for his performance in this movie. And William H. Macy says, I'll speak to him and I'll make sure you get the good tables. And he vouches for her and is there for her and kind of intervenes when somebody's trying to mistreat her. And we get the feeling that he has longed for her from afar, that from the time she's shown up, he has no intention of ever making a move or ever trying to initiate anything. That's a part of life he's given up on. But he can't help but want to do something nice for her and just kind of exchange maybe a brief hello or something like that. And for him, that's enough to make his day. And then we see that he lives, when he leaves there, he kind of vouches for her. We see that he lives in this motel that is beyond depressing, and that he is just kind of eking his way through life. And early in the film, Alec Baldwin comes up to him and they're talking, and who's plays Shelley in the film. And we then find that Bernie says, I'm out at the end of the week. I'm out of here. And Shelley is not taking this well because he's basically the best cooler in the business. He needs William H. Macy to be there. He needs Bernie. And he's kind of making his plea, and he said, no, I'm done. I'm out of this place. You get the feeling that Vegas, that life, has sucked him dry. Then when he leaves the casino, we see that Natalie, played by Maria Bello, is out there waiting for him. And she initiates a conversation where she says hi when he first walks out. He does the cliche where, he looks over his shoulder like, me? And she kind of laughs. And basically they go to have a cup of coffee at a diner, and as they're talking, he's explaining to her, look, I'm all wrong for you. I don't understand why you would even, someone of your caliber, and he even kind of inquires like, look, I don't have a lot of money. I can't afford, insinuating that she's a prostitute. And it's not that he's saying you're that type of girl. He's saying, I can't fathom any other reason you'd be sitting here with me if you weren't in that line of work. Like, look at me, look at you. I'm just a realist. And, then she's steadfast in saying no, and he even looks at her after he's insulted her and says, see, I've even cooled this table. And she looks at him and says, no, you haven't cooled anything. She is undeterred. She is bound and determined to spend that night with him. And they get back to the hotel room, and they have a scene in an encounter that it feels so real that when you watch it, you have a voyeuristic kind of feeling that you don't have when you watch those kind of cheap movies like something like a 50 Shades to Grey, which is nothing more than, like a glorified soap opera or, a steamy music video when MTV still showed them. You really feel like you're seeing two lonely people connect. You see the awkwardness in it. You see someone who romance is so foreign, intimacy is so foreign to him that he's like an awkward, scared child and has to be walked through this. And watching that, you almost feel like you should turn away because you feel like you're intruding on a private moment. And very few films can elicit responses like that in a time where, most of us that have grown up have seen everything now. But when you see real intimacy, genuine intimacy, it almost does make you feel like an intruder, and it reminds you how many films actually lack that. And as the film progresses, we see their relationship deepen, and we learn things about Natalie, that she came there with dreams of being a showgirl, and now she's a cocktail waitress in a casino who's just barely getting by. And she's kind of breathing life back into him. And for the first time in her life, she's looked at as something more than just, hey, go get me a drink. Hey, go do this, or you're attracted. He sees her as a real person. And she sees the awe with which he looks at her. And you get the feeling that it's not that she forgot what it felt like to be looked at that way as much as she's never been looked at that way. And we watch their relationship grow and mature in just a short amount of time, but it feels real because you feel that this has been lacking for these two people for so long that when they came together like this, that they didn't have to wait, that it picked up that fast. And it's been so long for both of them that the enthusiasm with which they attacked the moment almost feels appropriate and understandable. And as this is going on, we also get to see the Alec Baldwin character, Shelley, in the other, what he's up against to preserve that casino. And Baldwin's character represents the old Vegas. And he simply detests what Vegas has become. This new Disneyland, like another type, Branson, Missouri, where it's just bringing in senior citizens with their fanny packs who bring the coins and they're just going to play the slots. And, it's way too family friendly for him. He misses the days when it was Sinatra and Dean Martin and the Sands Hotel and Sammy Davis Jr., when it was this glitzy, glamorous place instead of this tourist trap for middle America where people just come and want to have their picture taken outside of a place. And he is so angry about that. And he's up against it with the management because the character Larry, played by Ron Livingston, is basically saying, you can't fight progress. This is where we're headed. This is where the money is. Baldwin is not gonna acquiesce to that. And it's such a good performance by Baldwin. As I said earlier, he got an Oscar nomination out of it. And he is ruthless in this film. He is the irredeemable guy who seems to have a heart that's almost calloused. And we don't know how he got that way. We don't know if he's always been that way. But he has this menacing quality and seems to lack a certain empathy. And that he's someone you don't want to get in his way. The only thing he really seems to have an attachment to, a love for, is Las Vegas. And Vegas and its corruption and its depravity, that's what speaks to him. That's who he really is. And that's what he's, in essence, still carrying a torch for. And as the movie progresses, Bernie tells Natalie, look, I want out of this life. I want out of here. I'm leaving. This city is sucking me dry. I can't take it anymore. And she then, he makes the offer for her to come with him, and she says, I can't do that. And then finally she breaks down and says, listen, I love you. I'm just going to have to say, like, I love you. And he says it back. And then she tells him later on in the film that he was right initially. She was paid. And she was paid by Shelley to keep William H. Macy, Bernie, from leaving. That was her goal, to stop him from leaving, to keep him there working at the casino. It was not just, oh, I thought you were a nice guy. She was, and she says to him, I was for sale that night. But then she says, no more. It's genuine now. And I only tell you that because I do love you now. And rather than want nothing to do with her, his love is undeterred. He doesn't care. And there's a moment in the film where he said, it'd been so long that I'd even forgotten what a woman's hands felt like on me. And that line really struck me. And then she says something to him too about how when she fell in love, she said, it didn't hurt that you put me on a pedestal, and it made the gutter look different. And there's a lot of truth in that line. I feel like that once you're put up there from that vantage point and you realize what life can be and what you yourself still can be, it's hard to settle for less. And they've both awakened something in each other that had been dormant for far too long. And you wouldn't think in a film about Vegas and corruption and all that you could see a love story that pure and that real. However, Shelley is not going to let them leave quietly. And as the scene progresses, or as the movie progresses, I should say, and we find out that Bernie has a child from a previous marriage, that he's been an absentee father. We then realize that his son has shown back up with nefarious intentions of scamming his dad out of money. And there's a scene that culminates at the casino with Alec Baldwin's character that's one of the most brutal scenes I've ever seen in a film, one of the more heartbreaking scenes, where Bernie realizes his own son, who's shown back up, has no use for him. However, he doesn't blame him. And at this point, he's really down on his luck, doesn't know what he's going to do. But when he goes to Maria Bello's character and she shows back up and says, listen, I love you and I don't care what the ramifications are, because Shelley is saying, this is not going to happen and I will do whatever I have to do to stop it. He even tells her in the film, if you were to be off into the desert, nobody's going to miss you. Nobody's looking for you. you matter to no one. And they make a pact with each other that they don't care, that they're going to go for it anyway. And the ending with them together, I'm not going to go into the mechanics of what they do and how he gets them out of it and that nature. But when you see that he's willing to take this on, that he's willing to risk his life because she's the one that really gave him life. And if it ends, it ends. But it's better than living a life where you're basically sleepwalking through your own life. And he knew he was doing it. What he didn't know was that there still was the possibility for something else. And seeing a film where two people in a place that makes its money off of people's addictions, people's hopes for a better life, people trying to get that quick fix, people trying to get it lucky. Seeing two people find love that is sustainable and real in an environment like that was such a unique experience as a viewer. So I really hope you find this film. It's truly a great piece of work and a great character study, and it's one of the better performances by Alec Baldwin I've ever seen, and I admire someone who really was the most famous person in this film being willing to take a supporting role, but when you see his performance, you'll realize why he did it. Until next time, thank you.